Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com. Happening now on Grid Tonight. Jimmie Johnson stepping away from the NTT IndyCar Series full-time. What's next for the 7-time NASCAR Cup Series championship career? Photo taken by Travis Hinkle from Penske Entertainment. Nicholas Latifi and Williams F1 will part way at the end of 2022. Is this the end of Latifi's F1 career? Photo courtesy of Williams F1. And Byron and Ty Gibbs were handed down penalties after Texas. Did NASCAR send a strong enough message? Photo take from Meg Oliphant from Getty Images. Hello to all our viewers watching here in the United States and around the world. Welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I am Joe Samaniego, and with me, Kobe Lambert from the Photo Finish. We encourage everyone to comment with the chat room with your questions and opinions. And before we get started with tonight's show, we want to acknowledge we are thinking of everyone living in Florida dealing with the effects of Hurricane Ian. Tonight, we'll keep all Floridians in our thoughts as a powerful storm passes through. Now, here's Kobe with our top story.
Yeah, we're definitely thinking about everyone down in Florida dealing with the effects of Hurricane Ian. And on Monday, Jimmie Johnson announced that he's retiring from full-time racing. Johnson raced full-time in the NTT IndyCar Series this year, finishing 21st in the championship, a top 5 finish at Iowa, and a top 10 finish at Texas. In 2 oval races were some of his top highlights. Outside of the ovals, he improved his pace on the road and street courses, closer to his competitors and lap times. Now Johnson is focused on checking off races on his bucket list and spending more time with his family. Joe, given Johnson's drop in form in the last several years, was it time for him to step away from full-time racing?
Honestly, if you were to ask Jimmie Johnson that question, he would say he could do another full-time season. He has the support from Carvana, his sponsors, and he'll love to do it. However, we know one of his big goals has been he's always wanted to be one of those racers, travel around with your helmet, your fire suit, and drive different disciplines. He's already accomplished a lot in his NASCAR Cup career. He fulfilled his dream in driving an IndyCar. If he wants to do more different races, he had to do this and step away from full-time competition. We saw how running full-time IndyCar, it's a huge commitment. Even though IndyCar has one of the shorter seasons compared to the other series in the grid ranking, if he wants to go out there, potentially do the 24 Hours Le Mans, Sebring, other sports car events, or even other events like the Bathurst 1000, he couldn't do a full-time schedule. He has the support of Carvana, who said they'll stick with Jimmie Johnson. Overall, I think this is a great move for his career. He's 47 years old. How many years of racing does he have left? This is just a great way to say, hey, my victory farewell tour in 2020 may have been affected with COVID, but this is almost like another victory tour, farewell tour, and he's racing around the world in different disciplines. This is very exciting for his career.
Yeah, I think this is very exciting for Jimmie Johnson. I know we'll talk about the 24 Hours of Le Mans in just a second, and that's one race on Jimmie Johnson's bucket list. He said he's really into all the sports car racing and stuff like that. So I expect to see Jimmie in racing in the Rolex 24, 12 Hours of Sebring. I know we're going to see him at Petit Le Mans this weekend, and he certainly wants to get to Circuit de la Sarthe as well. Maybe we even see him racing in the Bathurst 1002 down in the Repco Supercars Championship. And this week we saw him driving a World of Outlaws sprint car, Ally sponsored car. That's Alex Bowman's ride. Yeah, so Jimmie's definitely getting a taste of all the different disciplines of racing. And towards the last part of his NASCAR career, he certainly wasn't the same driver that we once saw, the driver that dominated the sport for so many years, winning a total of 7 NASCAR Cup Series championships. So it felt like it was time for him to get out of NASCAR full time, and then he went over to IndyCar. I thought he did as best as he could possibly do, but Jimmy saw what it took to be a proper IndyCar driver, and unfortunately, he was just at the age, when it's really hard to teach an old dog new tricks. I think Iowa, Texas, his speed during the month of May, Jimmie Johnson has to be proud of what he was able to do in IndyCar. But I'm sure the grind of this IndyCar calendar, and and basically most weeks just riding around trying to get a good finish on the road and street course dominated schedule. I think it was time for Jimmie Johnson to try a new adventure. Yeah, but we certainly have to give him a round of applause for what he was able to do in the NTT IndyCar Series. And we know Hendrick Motorsports leading the Garage 56 effort, taking the next gen car to France. The 24 Hours of Le Mans is scheduled for the same weekend as the NASCAR Cup Series race at Sonoma Raceway. So it's unlikely that we'll see an active Cup driver join the Hendrick entry at Le Mans unless NASCAR grants them a special waiver to miss the Sonoma race. Is it safe to assume that Jimmie Johnson will probably be a part of the HMS Le Mans driver lineup?
It's very safe to assume he'll be part of that lineup at Le Mans. This is just another event that he wanted to say, I compete in 24 Hours of Le Mans, the next gen NASCAR Cup Series car. Yes, it's going to be specially modified for this race, but I feel he's going to feel really comfortable in that car. It feels a lot like some of the newer race cars that we see with the sequential gear shift. I think he's really going to fit comfortable in that car and just really hit the ground running. And especially since we're not going to have any active Cup Series drivers, I'll be really shocked if any of them decides to get the waiver and miss the Sonoma race, because we're seeing this year how the points are so critical each and every point. I think it's very safe to say he'll be in there, and I think it's going to be safe to say, hearing some of the rumors too, he might be considering also another thing a lot of people talking about, doing the double, the Indy 500 and the Coke 600.
And I'm really glad you bring that up, Joe, because we have a comment right here in the chat room from our own Matthew Bro saying that Jimmie Johnson and Kyle Busch both running the double in 2023 would be amazing, not only for NASCAR, but motorsports in general. Totally agree with your comment, Matthew. I know Kyle Busch, it seems like he's really gathered the attention from Zach Brown, the CEO of McLaren Racing, Aaron McLaren SP. And it's funny because we were just talking about this on previous grid shows. If there was like one Chevrolet powered team that would go after Kyle Busch, it certainly has to be Zach, Hollywood, Brown, because this is a Zach Brown type of story. And I'd be surprised if Kyle Busch is able to get an opportunity to run the Indy 500, that it would be with anybody else but Arrow McLaren SP. But Jimmie Johnson returning to the Cup Series to do the double, I think that would be a huge story for motorsports, as you said, and the team that Jimmy's rumored to potentially be doing that with is Trackhouse Racing to try to make a special exception in the number 91 Project 91 entry. I know Justin Marks is supposed to be doing this special entry for international drivers from other disciplines, and Jimmie Johnson doesn't really count under that category, but they'd be willing to have a special case here for Jimmie Johnson to do the double, and we'll see how this all turns out. I'm sure we're going to be hearing a lot more about the double in the next several months ahead. And with Johnson leaving IndyCar on a full time basis, there hasn't been an update from Chip Ganassi Racing on its fourth IndyCar team. Assuming Ganassi fills the spot, that'll be a top tier seat available that many drivers are going to be fighting for. So, Joe, in your opinion, who could be in contention to take over the number 48 Honda? And I have a feeling they would probably renumber it as well.
I think it'll be renumbered unless if Jimmie Johnson decides to do 2 or 3 starts, like the Indy 500, Long Beach, and maybe another oval. One of the drivers I'm thinking of, if Jimmie Johnson's doing at least 3 races, you have to look at Linus Lundqvist. He may not have the funding like Kyle Kirkwood did last season, but if you have a driver that's going to do some of the races and then to put enough sponsorship deal together to put Linus in that seat, that'd be a really exciting effort. Of course, he got the Indy Lights Championship, part of Dale Coyne Honda. Chip Ganassi runs Honda. I could see that being a potential deal that could come into place, but it's really going to be a factor of, is Jimmie Johnson going to run some IndyCar races? Of course, they could always go to a hired gun like Tony Kanaan, who's a veteran, been there. But I think if they really want to develop another driver for potentially a future full time run and have 4 full time teams, Linus Lundqvist, he's a driver on my top of my list.
And I'm really glad you brought up Lundqvist, Joe, because this situation could end up helping him get onto the IndyCar grid, not necessarily with Chip Ganassi Racing, but Delcoin Racing. They really want him to be a part of their driver lineup, and it doesn't look like David Malukas is going to be moving over to Chip Ganassi Racing, as a lot of people thought with Alex Pelostet in that number 10 NTT that a Honda. But if Chip, let's say for example, if Chip Ganassi Racing decides to just stick with Pelot, Erickson, and Dixon, just three cars full time, and then maybe bring out the Forts for the Indy 500, that would open up Honda to be able to add a third car to Delcoin Racing, and Delcoin wants to go to a three-car team, but right now it seems like Honda's maxed out with the number of engines that they can hand out. So potentially, if Ganassi drops to a three-car team, this could allow Delcoin Racing to go to a three-car team, and they could have Malukas, Sato, and also the Indy Lights champion Linus Lundqvist as well. So I really think this number 48 card is opening could potentially lead to an engine for Delcoin Racing to get Linus Lundqvist and a third Delcoin Racing Honda. So I don't necessarily think that Linus would be a Chip Ganassi racing driver in this case, because Delcoin wants to keep Linus Lundqvist in the family. And at the end of last week, it was announced that Nicholas Latifi and Williams will part ways at the end of the 2022 season in F1. This is a 3-year run between the two and creates another open spot on next year's F1 grid. This means we will have one opening at Haas and Williams. Yesterday morning, Joe Guan Yu announced he'd return to Alfa Romeo. Everyone is waiting to see what happens with the Alpine seat vacated by Fernando Alonso. Many have anticipated a deal between the French team and AlphaTauri for Pierre Gasly to move over, but even that's up in the air now with Colton Herta's path to F1 and a move to AlphaTauri seemingly dead for now. Assuming Gasly goes to Alpine, which empty seat would be the most sought after by drivers?
Assuming Gasly goes to Alpine, I would say AlphaTauri because you got to get that connection with Red Bull. And we know Sergio Perez has been running well exactly lately. So there could always be the potential if you have a good 2023 season, and especially you outperform Yuki Tsunoda, you might end up in that Red Bull if things really don't work out with Sergio Perez. Yes, he has a contract to 2024, but we've seen how performance really matters and being competitive. But Red Bull, they're really on top of it. But another seat that I would say will probably be the second one. It's going to shock some folks. Williams F1. If you look at the constructor stand, it's entering Singapore. Haas is ahead of AlphaTauri. When it comes to Williams, they got some points with Nick DeFries and twice with Alex Albon. Overall, they might finish last in the constructors, but remember that's going to give them more wind tunnel time, more development time, as the teams that finish higher up in the stands will have less development time. If they were to have a great team of Alex Albon and then another driver that could really bring a lot of skills in sharing the data, getting the team to make a better car, I think Williams could really improve next year and be a contender and not be last place in the constructors.
Oh yeah, I think Williams would definitely be a great destination for a driver to go right now, and we still have a lot to figure out with this crazy Formula One silly season driver market. It seems like it's changing day by day now. And speaking of Williams, one driver that will be in high demand is Nick DeFries, the Formula E champion, a strong debut with Williams at Monza, and he scored points on debut, and that probably the reason why Latifi got sacked. That was like the final nail in the coffin. A car that Nick DeFries, does isn't spending a lot of time a lot of time with the team, and he comes straight in on debut in F1, and he blows Latifi out of the water. Helmut Marko from Red Bull has expressed interest in Nick DeFries as well after that strong outing, potentially in their AlphaTauri seat in 2023 alongside Yuki Tsunoda. However, Mick Schumacher has been capturing their attention as well. And where could Mick Schumacher possibly end up? It really seems like the options might be running out for Mick. AlphaTauri might be his only legitimate shot to stay on the grid next year, as of right now, because it's been reported that he's going to be leaving the Ferrari Young Driver Academy at the end of the year, and it doesn't look like he's going to be able to keep that Haas seat either. Which driver has a greater chance of getting the AlphaTauri seat? Nick DeFries, Mick Schumacher, or could they go to a Red Bull Junior driver in FIA Formula 2?
Nick DeFries, I think, has a lot of options. AlphaTauri, they're expressed interest through Marco, and then of course you got Williams F1. They'll love to keep him there, and I think Nick DeFries over at Williams, He and Alex Albon, I think, will be a really great team. But of course, they're going to have to do a lot of work and improve in that car. The big thing I see with Nick DeVries too, if he was to really go into AlphaTauri, outperform Yuki Tsunoda, he could really be a prime contender to move up to that Red Bull seat. I think he really wants to prove a point. He belongs in F1. Look at his career in Formula E. He has done a lot there, including the World Championship from last season. Of course, his teammate did it this year. But Nick DeVries, I think he'll be a better fit in AlphaTauri compared to Mick Schumacher. Mick Schumacher, yes, he's with the Haas. He has to outperform Magnussen. If he was to go there, run the same as Yuki Tsunoda or behind, I think then a lot of people will really question if he belongs in F1. He really will have to go there and outperform Yuki, or else he's going to have a lot of questions. So I think Nick DeVries will probably be the better fit for AlphaTauri.
Yeah, good fit at AlphaTauri. And I'd actually be happy to be Nick DeFries right now because he certainly has a whole lot of options, probably more options than a lot of the F1 drivers who are looking for seats next year. I think Williams would be a really great fit. Him and Alex Albon, I think they'd get along extremely well over the course of a full season. And Williams, I think they could be a team on the rise as well. We've seen them, run completely at the back of the grid, and they've been slowly improving, making some gains. And you mentioned Joe, the extra wind tunnel time that could certainly help them out a lot as well. But as far as the AlphaTauri seat, I could see Nick DeFries get in that seat. I think Mick Schumacher probably be unlikely, but never say never. And looking at their junior driver program, looking at their three drivers who are currently racing in FIA Formula Two: Dennis Hauger, Jahan Deruvala, and Liam Lawson. I think Liam Lawson will probably have the best chance of getting that seat right now. I think Lawson is probably the most deserving young Red Bull driver to move up to F1 and race at AlphaTauri. I think he definitely has what it takes to be a Formula One driver. We've seen flashes of brilliance from Jahan Deruvala, but I'd be really surprised if they decided to go with him for that role. And Dennis Hauger, think he's a really talented young driver, but I don't think he's ready to be an F1 driver yet. And we'll certainly see how this shapes up and who gets that coveted AlphaTauri seat. And following the NASCAR Cup Series race at Texas Motor Speedway, NASCAR laid down the law by issuing penalties to William Byron and Ty Gibbs. Byron was fined $50,000 and 25 owners points and 25 drivers points for spinning out Denny Hamlin under caution. This drops Byron to third. This drops Byron from third in the championship and 17 points above the cut line in Talladega to 10th in the championship, 8 points below the cut line, the top eight you need to be if you want to advance to the next round. Ty Gibbs was fined $75,000 and 25 honors points since he isn't declared to score driver points in the NASCAR Cup Series. This drops the number 23 Toyota to 23rd in honors points behind the number 31 Kaulig Racing Chevrolet of Justin Haley. Gibbs got busted for almost knocking Ty Gibbs into crew members performing a pit stop on pit road. Later on, footage emerged of Gibbs getting into it with Eric Jones, hitting the 43 car under caution, and Jones voiced his displeasure on Twitter. Actually, very very early this morning, I believe it was around 3 a.m. when Eric Jones voiced his displeasure, warning Gibbs not to do that to him ever again. Gibbs issued an apology, and this is not the first time he's done this, saying that he has to have a better understanding of the situation and his surroundings, but he was thankful no one was injured on pit road and promised to learn from the situation. Do you feel both penalties were fair, and will it discourage others from trying the same thing?
I feel when you look at William Byron's penalty, yes, that will discourage folks from doing that again under caution, spinning out somebody like that. Because now, William Byron, he goes from entering Talladega above the cut line where he knows if I get in the big one, but the bottom four in the playoffs also get in the big one and others, I might still be in the good. Well, now you're in the bottom four. If you get caught up in that big one, even if the other playoff drivers are caught up, you're still going to be most likely in the bottom four. So it just makes it where he has to run a perfect race, keep his nose clean, and try to win. That's asking a lot at Talladega, whereas Larry Mack said, if your vehicle can start up, you have a shot at winning. When it comes to Ty Gibbs, this is where I feel a little torn. It hurts 23-11 big time to lose those owner points. They're behind, as you mentioned, Kaulig Racing. There's prize money on the line. So it looks like Ty Gibbs didn't get that big of a blow when it came to a penalty. He does got 75,000, but I think what's really going to hurt Ty Gibbs is the reputation. Seeing Eric Jones tweet calling out Ty Gibbs, seeing how Brad Keselowski retweeted the footage of what Ty Gibbs did on pit road. Ty Gibbs has to run against these people. A lot of times when you have a rookie come into the Cup Series, they got to build that repertoire, that trust with the veterans. He lost a lot of it on Texas Motor Speedway. So even though the NASCAR fine may have not been exactly what a lot of folks wanted, they may have wanted to see more. Considering the fact that 2311 lost owner points because of substitute driver that they have, Ty Gibbs can't feel good about that. And then to see other drivers calling him out for what he did, I think Ty Gibbs probably doesn't feel the greatest right now. He probably feels a bit embarrassed, but he has to go out there, earn that respect from the veterans. And I think that's going to be a taller task for him now after what he did.
Yeah, yeah, and Ty Gibbs' start to his NASCAR Cup Series career isn't it hasn't gotten off to the best possible start. And the last thing you want to do is start off on the wrong foot with all the veterans and the NASCAR Cup Series. And we've seen during his time in the Xfinity Series last year, this year, that Gibbs has certainly rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, and he's tried to earn a lot of respect from his competitors on the track. It seemed like at one point earlier in the year, he lost his way, and then he started, getting back on task, and it really seemed like he was beginning to earn respect from drivers in the Xfinity Series. And then Texas lost his cool on pit road with Ty Dillon, and then bumping Eric Jones under caution. That's not smart at all if he wants to earn respect from the Cup Series veterans. Since it looks like he will more than likely be a Cup driver full time in 2023. It, with Gibbs been the leading candidate to replace Kyle Busch in the number 18 Toyota. So if Ty Gibbs, I think very highly of Ty Gibbs, the race car driver. I think he's a generational talent that has the potential to do many great things in NASCAR. I think he can win a whole bunch of Cup races and win multiple NASCAR Cup Series championships. But I think he certainly has a lot of maturing to do as a young driver. And once that maturity sets in place, I think Ty Gibbs will be good to go, and we'll see how long it takes for him to mature as a driver. And looking at the William Byron penalty, I really wish NASCAR had done something during the race. I felt like that would have been a good enough penalty if they would have been like, William, we're going to hold you for like a lap, 2 laps or so for doing that, or even like they do at the local short tracks, as we talked about on Grid Live Wrap Up. Just send them to the back of the field, start at the tail end of the longest line. I felt like that would have been a decent penalty, but unfortunately, it had to come to this. And I think, given the circumstances, I think this was a solid move for NASCAR. We just really expected a fine and probation to the end of the year, but with Byron being a playoff driver and docking 27 driver points and owners points, I think NASCAR sent a really strong message to all drivers. It doesn't matter if you're a non-playoff driver, playoff driver. You're in the wrong. We're gonna bust. We're gonna bust you. Not gonna give you just a slap on the wrist. And I think they made an example out of William Byron here. And with Byron now finding himself below the cut line as we approach Talladega, Hendrick Motorsports announced plans to appeal the penalty. Also, we found out Ryan Blaney's team dropped their appeal, so his crew chief Jonathan Hassler and members of his pit crew are going to be suspended for the next 4 races. In your opinion, have appeals become more of a strategic move, and what are the chances Byron wins his appeal?
Yes, the filing of appeal has become very strategic. Look at what Ryan Blaney's team did. It's very smart. File that appeal. You don't lose your crew chief for Texas Motor Speedway, a racetrack where Ryan Blaney won the All Star race. When you go to Talladega and the Charlotte Roval, there's so much out of control. Those are two opportunities to not have your crew chief. So they go to Texas. They ran well. They didn't get the win, but they overall had a good day. So then drop the appeal. You miss out Texas. You miss out the Roval. Two races were really, is the crew chief going to be that critical at Talladega, at the Roval? Probably not. So if you're still in the playoffs, you're going to be in a good spot when you come back. When it comes to William Byron's appeal, I think this one is not so much of a strategic move, but just simply you need those points. You lost those points. If he is to be eliminated from this next round by 25 points or less, that means the mistake he made, the poor decision he made to spin out Denny Hamlin, costed him and his team the opportunity to advance into the playoffs. not positions on the track. That move solidly alone, I think that really is going to get a lot of drivers' attention, especially if he doesn't advance by 25 points or less.
Joe, I'm just gonna say it. I have a better chance of getting in the car, going down to the gas station, buying a lottery ticket, and winning the Powerball tonight than William Byron has a chance of winning his appeal. I really do think both of us we have a better chance of winning the lottery tonight than Byron winning. I don't really see how he can possibly win this because NASCAR have access to the data. They can tell when you slow down, when you accelerate up. And all of that. So, and Byron even admitted that he wanted to send a message to Denny Hamlin for how hard he was racing him, but he ended up doing it too hard and spinning him out under caution. So that's that's basically it right there. I don't really understand why. I mean, I understand why they're appealing this, because that's 25 valuable points that you need, but at the same time, I really don't see how they're going to win this because they really don't have a good argument at all. And it just goes to show William Byron's been a Cup Series driver for several years now, and also shows that he still has some maturing to do as a driver as well. Because he should have been thinking bigger picture, but he ended up losing his cool, making that move on Denny Hamlin, and at the end of the day, depending on how the Talladega and the Charlotte Roval go, it might end up being the reason why he doesn't make a deep playoff run.
Yeah, it totally could ruin his playoff run and take care of his hopes in an unfortunate way, and all because of a choice he made on the racetrack to spin somebody during the yellow. That'll be an unfortunate way to end the season for his championship hopes. Some other news to note: the 2023 FIA Formula One calendar was updated yesterday to include 6 sprint races. The sprint race weekends were not announced yet, but it brings the total to 30 races during the 2023 season. 2022 saw 3 sprint races, one at Imola, the Red Bull Ring, and later on this year, Interlagos, Brazil. The 2023 NTT IndyCar Series schedule was released yesterday afternoon with no major changes. 17 rounds, with Texas Motor Speedway included on April 2nd, the second round of the schedule, with no clash with Sebring next year. 5 oval races on 4 tracks, 7 road courses on 6 tracks, and 5 street courses. Worth noting, Grand Prix of Portland is September 3rd, and Detroit moved from Belle Isle to downtown Detroit. Benjamin Peterson was named today to drive for AJ Foyt Racing in 2023. The agreement spans multiple seasons as it plans to develop the IndyCar rookie and is aligned to a longer-term plan with AJ Foyt Racing. Peterson finished 5th in the Indy Lights standings with 1 win at Portland International Raceway. It is unclear if he will be taking Kyle Kirkwood or Dalton Kellett's seat, who is still finalizing his 2023 plans. Arrow McLaren SP hired Brian Barnhart to join the IndyCar team effort. While introduced Thursday, there was no announcement on his title at Arrow McLaren SP Racing. Last week on Grid Tonight, we reported that Taylor Kyle departed his role as team president. McLaren CEO Zach Brown said a 5-member board is still finalizing the team structure. Next year, Arrow McLaren SP will have 3 full-time cars with Pato Ward, Felix Rosenqvist, and Alexander Rossi switching from Andretti Autosport to field that 3rd car, and MotoGP expanded their 2023 calendar with the addition of Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan becomes the 30th different country to host MotoGP this season, and is a 5-year deal to see MotoGP race in Kazakhstan till 2027. Kazakhstan has a population of 19 million, with Russia on the north and west border of the country and China along the eastern border. The 2023 calendar has yet to be released for MotoGP. And Kobe, before we proceed on, we do have a pick a winner that we had to decide. World Rally Championship in New Zealand, and it's going to be the debut of Shane Van Gisbergen. I know traditionally, if Shane Van Gisbergen is on the track, we pick him. Shane Van Gisbergen, your pick for World Rally Championship Rally New Zealand?
No, Joe, because he's not competing in the top category. Yeah, if Shane Van Gisbergen was in the top class, I'd definitely go with him for this one. But unfortunately, sorry, SVG, Can't go with you this time. I'm gonna go with someone else who's won multiple World Rally Championships, and he's in the field. It seems like every time I pick Collie Rovanpera, he never wins. And watch, he's gonna win this weekend because I'm going with the legend himself, Sebastian Ogier, to get the job done.
OJ is a great pick. I'm gonna go with Rovanpera, the points leader. He hasn't won in a while. I think he'll love to go out there, get a win, and really start to put down this championship, put one hand on it, and then just really try to get this championship claimed in the next closing round for World Rally Championship. And of course, Friday we'll be on the air with the women in motorsports. Saturday, Grid Live Previews at noon Eastern, where we're going to recap World Rally as well as preview Formula One, W Series, MotoGP, NASCAR. Busy weekend. Sunday, Grid Live wrap up approximately 90 minutes after the conclusion of the NASCAR Cup Series race at Talladega Superspeedway. Monday, Grid Encore. And of course, all this is brought to you by our Patreon subscribers. Call the show Mark and Robin for investing in the GRIDnet Network. Thank you so much for doing that. You could click on the link below to join our Patreon or buy me a coffee at one-time contribution to the GRIDnet Network. And of course, if you want to invest in the stock market, be sure to visit the link public.com, download the app, use the referral code GRIDnet to earn free stock, get started, and utilize the stock market for your investment at public.com. For Kobe Lambeth at The Podium Finish, I'm Joe Samriego. Thank you for watching today's episode of Grid Tonight. We'll see you next time. Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.